About 12 years ago, I took a week off and I drove down to Williamsburg, Virginia. I always wanted to see Colonial Williamsburg. I enjoyed it a great deal, even when you factor in the 10, 11-hour drive up and back. It's too much fun on I-95. I don't recommend that to anybody. Later that year, I got a Christmas card from Tom and Jean McElroy, a couple I knew from my GE days in San Jose in 1984 and 1985. They had moved to Williamsburg a few years before to be closer on the East Coast to their great-grandchildren. If only I had known they were nearby. I remember how Tom told me one day out in San Jose how he had quit smoking, and how his wife Jeannie supported him. But he wasn't quite sure he could make it through, and when he did, she teased him. Thomases get a bad rap, but they always manage to find their way, don't they? How about today's gospel? We have what people remember as a story about doubting Thomas because he didn't believe that the apostles' story about the risen Christ appearing to them. He needed to see with his own eyes. That bad rap thing, it seems a little unfair to me because he was only asking for what the other disciples had the chance to see firsthand. Jesus appeared to them and he wasn't there. That one moment of seeming doubt seems to define him, doesn't it? Here, as we talk about him like this even now, I don't think you or I would like having one moment like that come to define who we are. So on this Divine Mercy Sunday, I invite you to consider Thomas through God's merciful eyes. Looking at his life, you see that it's not doubt that defines him. For example, in the Lazarus story we heard just a few weeks ago during Lent, Thomas plays a part. Jesus and the disciples had left Jerusalem because, the people had threatened to kill Jesus for saying he was the Son of God. When they get word that Lazarus is ill, Jesus says he will go back to Judea. The disciples say, no, they were just trying to kill you there. But Thomas urges the disciples to travel with Jesus. Let us go and die with him. Thomas is dedicated. When Jesus tells him he's going to prepare a place for them in his Father's house, Thomas, thinking, asks, Master, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? Thomas asks the right questions. In today's gospel, you might be wondering where Thomas is when Jesus does appear to the others. While they were in that room, locked behind closed doors out of fear, was Thomas perhaps courageous enough to be out in the world sharing Jesus' word? We're not sure, but it's a thought to hang on to. These things lead Thomas to need to see the risen Jesus with his own eyes that give him the strength to follow Jesus when he was there and when there was risk to be taken on Jesus' behalf, and when he wished to understand him more clearly and deeply. At the end of today's gospel, Jesus doesn't see the doubter. He sees the man whose courage and clear mind give him the strength to be one of his most loyal and driven followers. Jesus sees all this and has mercy on Thomas. He does point out where Thomas could have done better, saying, "Blessed are those who have not seen but believe." But Jesus gives Thomas exactly what he needs. He lets Thomas touch his wounds. Now, how about us? It is true that God turns to you and to me. God sees the whole picture of our lives, not just the weaker moments that maybe others might see and maybe try to define you by. God doesn't only see you or see me when we're impatient with others, or think about ourselves first, or not acting on behalf of our sisters or brothers, or whatever you and I might fear about some dark corner of our lives. God does not only see the ways that you and I fall short. God also sees the love that you have for your neighbor, the humility you exercise when you consider your life and then ask, what can I do for you, Lord, for others? The Lord sees your compassion and your heart for others, the way you work for justice, even if all these things we do imperfectly. God sees that you and I grow, and you and I still try to do things better. And God sees how all these things have brought us all right up here today, this afternoon, to remember the Easter sacrifice Jesus made for us when he died on the cross for our sins. Remember that he made that sacrifice once for us and for all time. This is God's infinite and divine mercy at work. and we try to follow it with Jesus to guide us every day. The news this Lent has been filled with the reality of war and violence and abuse of people. Greed, power, despair, all these things are on people's minds, that and more. You and I need someone who is thinking differently, someone who is courageous, someone who doesn't mind remaining inside, who doesn't remain inside locked doors, but goes out to where the people are to work and continue to build God's kingdom. As we all enjoy these blessings of Easter, may God's divine mercy and love empower us to be more like Thomas and to courageously follow Jesus every day.